I watched a 7-year-old girl, Palestinian girl in Gaza, die of shock this morning on social media. It was on TikTok. And I had already planned to go to the march in Seattle. I just got home. It was a heartwarming American gathering of people who are wounded by the criminal insanity of Joe Biden and his support for the Zionist mayhem. I hear they have problems with Zionists in Texas. They call them feral hogs there. Well, I'd like to discuss with you what this means for Joe Biden because of me personally. But to explain that, you have to get to the root of certain things about the way the American empire perceives itself. A famous librarian of the Library of Congress was named Daniel Boorstin. He wrote a book called Hidden History. One of the premises of Hidden History was that many historians of the past based what they read and what they wrote about American history, what influenced American history, was based on the books that were on the shelves of the people of the era that were being described. Well, he argued that the books that were more influential were gone from the shelves. And that is because they were read thoroughly and the binding broke and they were eventually discarded. So there are things that influence history that aren't explained by what has been preserved. Now, there's a paradox in this, because what they are disclosing by this method of argument is that what is influential is the primary source of our belief in what has been going on. And when you're presented with me, what that means is discarding true history. I'm not playing all big, as they say in Pittsburgh. It's a simple fact that my family name is the oldest of the old in America. We were in Plymouth Meeting. Now, you could argue, and some people do argue, that the legitimacy of the colonialists should be eradicated from our university curriculum. This is where political correctness gets entangled with critical race theory. But when you look at the facts, my grandfather was a copy editor for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Miami Herald, the Wichita Times, but primarily his career was at the Post-Dispatch in St. Louis. My father was a naval lieutenant in World War II on the CVL-30, which George Bush was also on. He became chair of the Department of Education School of Philosophy at the University of Pittsburgh. He was well regarded. He was a Peace Corps leader. The Northeast Regional Director for Amnesty International took classes with him and told me that he was a hero to her. He wrote books on the public schools. He drove a school bus in his retirement. He was a humdinger. Well, the problem with Biden is that he is a hack politician who has become good and acquainted with the inside circles and how they operate in government. He's also struck a chord with Donald Trump, who is blackmailing America. Either we go along with Biden's morbid criminal nonsense towards Gaza, his refusal to reappraise Israel in light of the hysteria and violent tantrums towards innocent people. If we don't go along with that, we're stuck with tune. Well, I'll explain why we don't want that. But I first want to explain another factor pertaining to me personally. I was ruined as a child. There's gang argumentation about the meaning of what happened and who did it. But I was ruined as a child. I was made deaf. My facial nerve was poisoned. I became traumatized. And people said it reflected a cowardly character. These were people who, by the way, attacked me blindside as full-grown men when I was 12 years old. That's quite an operational vantage point from which to call a battered, deaf child cowardly. Attacking them blindside, it was like being shot. That's manhood to that gang in Pittsburgh. Well, rhetoric aside, I was a dishwasher most of my life. I was a dishwasher most of my life, and finally a deaf girl with Down syndrome crossed the union line that she couldn't even comprehend or understand existed because she has Down syndrome. Taught me sign language. And I was banned from school in Seattle, Washington. Think of it. Seattle. Home of the brave Seattle left. They banned me from school. Want to know why? Because I questioned Ronald Reagan's movie career. So, rooting open back to Pittsburgh where the deans asked me for a paper. I clued them in of certain historical facts I'd unearthed, such as that the men who first developed the Burning Cross for the KKK were friends of Benito Mussolini, who made Reagan's wartime films with Errol Flynn, another one of them. And they said, after reading my paper, you get back to school. I made honors, graduated, came back west, went to Tacoma Community College, where I am alumni of Phi Theta Kappa. That's what I call making America great again. So I've done my homework and I do my work and I understand the facts. And one of the facts I understand is that Joe Biden can't help but be destroyed by his own criminal actions. You can't help it because it's already done. Let me tell you what was done. One of the first pieces of misinformation that forms a fortress over the thesis of Daniel Boorstin, that which is in play is what's influential and constitutes history, not that which is preserved. Because this isn't going to reach that many people. I know the people who it does reach are honorable and important people. It's true, they may be disenfranchised. True, they may not have a lot of power. But when they meet your eyes with a steady gaze, they're the people who you want to be appraised by. They know what things mean. The most important piece of misinformation that I'm talking about is the claim that Hamas's valiant sky ride to try to take prisoners to exchange for the hostages in Israeli prisons was the day that marked the onset of this abominable war, November 7th, 2023. Does anybody dispute that? I do, because it's factually not true. And I don't mean to bore you to tears with the stories of 1913 in Jericho, or Mr. Balfour, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Chaim Weizmann, all the old boring to tears stories of the Nakba. That's not what I'm about. It was much simpler than that. November 7th, 2023 is not the day this began. November 5th, 2023 is the day they will never allow it to be marked because it's too revealing. It's too clearly the truth about what happened. We know, and it's in spin, that the Zionists yawned a year ago and said, oh, look what Hamas is up to. And they had all details of how it was going to go. On November 5th, 2023, Egypt told them it's about to happen. And Israel said, wow, that's great, and moved the supernova rave into position. So when Hamas and the daring young men in their flying machines landed in Israel, much to their consternation, they landed in the midst of a flower power celebration. 5 minutes away were Israeli Apache helicopters with Hellfire missiles. They didn't arrive for 6 hours, and when they did, it was indiscriminate slaughter of vehicles containing Israelis. The Israelis knew it was coming, moved the human shield into position so that there would be havoc and mayhem, civilian hostages instead of military hostages. That's what they wanted, so they could launch their abominable blitzkrieg, which is ongoing on innocent people. Toon sits in the shadows, blackmailing everybody. Let me tell you what we're being blackmailed by. This is the hidden history. This is the hidden history that comes from the fact of what Joe Biden has already done, and I will never stand for being done to my name. It's dishonest, it's crazy, and it doesn't have any jurisdiction over my imagination or loyalty whatsoever. I don't know what this hack thinks he's doing, but it's going to take more than a hack politician like Biden to get me to go along with this outrage. Here's the fact. Brace yourself. if you don't already know, this is going to hurt you personally because your name is on it now, thanks to Biden. For 6 weeks, every single day, more children were murdered by the Zionists than by Adolf Hitler in Auschwitz. Think about that. Because your name is on it. He put my name on it. He dared to put my name on such a bloody racket. I will never stand for it. The average age of the fatalities is 5 years old. If you can stand yourself after knowing that, I pity you. Well, there is a fairly decent man in the wings in the default position. I don't know why he hasn't said anything. Maybe I'm deluding myself again when it comes to these fools. But Robert Kennedy would stand a chance of gaining my vote if he would at least say Israel needs to undergo a reconstruction, because they are clearly antebellum. Not even the slave masters south of the Mason-Dixon in the days of the peculiar institutions we called slavery committed such a holocaustal slaughter of people living in the ghetto of American South slavery. There were cases like Rosewood. There were incidents, and of course, I'm not trying to erase from the records the middle passage, which corresponds to the Nakba, if you care to write poetry about the two things. What I'm saying, however, is that the place to put the indignation isn't to play pinball with it. Oh, if I blame Biden, I'm going to have to live with Toon. It's to see them slapping five at the barbershop with Obama and Bush and the people who killed JFK. Biden stands no chance after what he pulled.